Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out today. So as John mentioned, my name is Pete Banks, and I work for a company named Guidebook. Guidebook is a mobile app publishing platform, and so we make it really easy to build apps for a variety of use cases. If you've used the app for the conference today, that's actually produced by our software. So hopefully you've enjoyed that experience. So today I'm going to be talking about mobile app automation. And interestingly, this talk really has not much to do with mobile itself, and will be discussion of a general purpose pipeline for processing events. So today I'll be specifically talking about user events in apps and then other ways you can build on top of that. So a general purpose pipeline is valuable for a lot of things. You can set up quite a bit with this architecture. And the beauty of it is that you set up the base architecture and then you just layer things on top of it at the end of the pipeline. So there's a variety of things you might want to do. I'm going to focus on a few examples today. Be talking a little bit about email marketing. That's important for a lot of companies that touches kind of all segments of the market, as well as your CRM, either your CRM or your customer CRM. So it kind of depends on the context of your business. You might want to enrich leads for yourself or for a client. And then also, the wild card at the end about letting your customer actually decide. So we'll be talking about a Webhooks framework for broadcasting out your own event data. So it's really important with an architecture like this that you spend time up front to think about the ways that you're going to use it and the use cases. By setting up the base architecture, you buy yourself a lot of flexibility down the line in terms of what you can add to it. So there are several keys to automation in apps and event processing, and I'll be going into each of these in detail. So one is near real time. You don't need to have a real-time processing architecture. If you do, you can set up dual pipelines in this example and be able to have more of a real-time pipeline and then more of a batched pipeline. And depending on your use case, you can always tune the timing of this to your specific needs. Some companies might want 1 minute delay, maybe you need an hour or even 24 hours, depending on what you're attempting to do. So another key is that you want to offload processing. As I mentioned earlier, that this is really not much to do with mobile. Mobile is not the place to process events. You have limited threads that are available. The main view thread is not where you want to be doing any of these actions. Your transactional database is certainly not where you want to do any of this. Your web app or your application server is also not a good spot for this. You want to try to offload all this processing and leave those transactional systems for user or client interaction so they're always up and available. Scaling becomes much easier when you start thinking about asynchronous processing as well. And being able to scale up makes it pretty straightforward when you're off of your transactional systems. Data consistency is one of the biggest keys here. So we're going to be talking about a pipeline for processing events, and you really want to think about your data format up front. This is something you're going to have to live with in this pipeline, and it's something that you're going to be potentially adding other inputs outside of mobile, and that it's really important to architect this in a consistent manner. And then this gives you the ability to go back in time and reprocess events if you have a new action or you want to export data to another system. Leveraging third-party services is also incredibly important. You want to be able to scale faster than your own development team can build. So there's services coming out, every quarter that can do a lot of specialized actions for you, and at all possible, you really want to resist the temptation to build in-house. Your team should be focusing on your core business, and you want to leverage everything else out there in the marketplace. So let's talk specifically about the architecture. So in this case, it is as easy as 1, 2, 3, but we'll see 3 becomes many, many other options. So what we're going to want to do is figure out a way to receive events, and then how you're going to actually store those events, and then what you're going to do for processing. And as I mentioned, number 3, processing becomes very multifold, and this is where, with the base architecture of 1 and 2, you can begin to layer more and more on top of the processing piece. So first, with receiving events, I'm going to be talking specifically in relation to Amazon Web Services. That's widely used technology out there that we've had great success in leveraging and continues to offer more and more innovation and decrease costs over time. So the first service that I'm talking about is Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose. So this is really great for streaming events. I think of it as a reverse fire hose. So it can suck in events from anywhere. It can operate at any scale. It automatically scales for you and leverages all the power of AWS in a really cost-effective manner. So you're sucking in events from everywhere, and you're spitting them out in a consistent stream. And with Kinesis, you can tune things so you are able to batch events. We've chosen a 10-minute window or 10 megabytes if you have a spike in events to keep your data files consistent. But this is open to kind of whatever you want to tune it to, and is kind of up to your individual use case, as I mentioned previously. So, and then saving events, Kinesis can output to a wide variety of data stores. In our case, we chose S3, which is Amazon's simple storage service. It's one of the kind of building blocks of AWS and one of the most basic things. It is basically their cloud hard drive. And so for us, we keep a collection of data files that are our events, our batched events. And this gives us the ability to augment that from other sources. It doesn't have to come from Kinesis. We know the format of things. So if we have other systems that can record event data or really any data that you want to put in this pipeline, it makes it easy to have one place to go, and the costs scale very well for you. As you move into maybe a new year, you can move your old events into Glacier, which is even a more cost-effective solution of S3, and really just buys you a lot of flexibility. So this is the base of the architecture, and then what we want to layer on is processing. So for this, we've chosen to use AWS Lambda, which is an amazing, more recent technology that Amazon has released in the last couple years. And it's the foundation of serverless computing. So you start to instead think of servers where you have to provision EC2 instances and think about virtual servers and installing software and security and networking. You can do away with all of that with Lambda. So you're able to build discrete programs that have intended actions, and you don't have to think about any of the other complexity with that. Lambda, through a CloudWatch trigger, is watching our S3 data bucket, and anytime a new file appears, Lambda wakes up and starts working. So if new files aren't coming in, you're not paying for any of that compute time, unlike with EC2. So the great part about Lambda is that they can call other Lambdas. So now we can start thinking in terms of all of the different actions that you want to take with a given event and what you want to do with that. So here, we start thinking in terms of, we call it our event dispatcher. So we're going in, and with each data file, we're examining each event, and we're trying to understand context about that, and then deciding which other processes we want to hand that off to. It lets you set up a real discrete architecture that it's very straightforward to add individual lambdas to add new use cases for your processing pipeline. So let's talk about some examples here. So the first one I mentioned is email marketing. There's a wide variety of solutions out there that, this is where I'm talking about offloading processing. So you can collect an event, user event, and be able to send that up to, we happen to use Marketo. There's a wide variety out there. So your email marketing platform can then accept data and either trigger a campaign, can trigger multiple campaigns, or just collect data itself to augment future campaigns based on user actions, if you're setting up a flow or triggers in those platforms. So it's pretty straightforward, the algorithm here. There's not a lot to it. You typically have a lead in your marketing platform. They're almost always indexed by email, because you're sending emails, of course. And so finding that lead and then augmenting it with this event data. And then you can really automate any workflow in that specific platform that you want and gets you out of your pipeline and into a specialized tool, where the beauty of this is that you can then start handing this off to other team members, other departments across your company. And so then let's talk about enriching your CRM. So there's a lot of different possibilities here for lead capture, data generation, that with any system you have, you can put it through this pipeline and be able to collect data about your users or about your clients, depending if you're a B2B business or B2C. So here, the algorithm is, again, pretty straightforward. There's a couple extra steps that we've chosen to do. And I should mention that both the Marketo integration and the Salesforce integration that I'm talking about here today, Guidebook has open sourced those, and I'll have a reference to that later. So you can take that code and customize it to whatever your use case is. Some of our clients have gotten a little bit more advanced with how they're processing in Salesforce. You might have an internal CRM that you want to send data to, or a cloud CRM like Salesforce. So for us, we're looking for a contact primarily. If that doesn't exist, then we're falling back to a lead. And then if that, of course, isn't there, we're just going to create a lead and augment that with whatever the event data is. Again, you're now off in a third-party system that you're leveraging, and you can create whatever workflows you need in that, and you're outside of your base architecture, so you can hand off to the team that actually manages that system. So then talking about giving your client control. So this is kind of flipping things here to where we're not integrating with a specific system, we are posting out to wherever we want. So this is through the concept of webhooks. So a webhook is a general purpose way to broadcast data, and then we like to think of it as a reverse API, to where you're setting the post specification and the receiver of it has to conform to that and effectively build the API to receive that data, but then can do whatever they want with it. So this is a way we found in a B2B instance to be able to let our clients capture event data from their end users using the app. So for example, today using the app for this event, your actions, of course, are tracked in there, and things that happen where you maybe add a session, then you could get sent the slides for that session, or be able to do really whatever you'd want because you're in control of the data at that point. So setting up a webhook is pretty straightforward. You're really thinking about a few key things. Which event are you looking for? And then even past that, the details of that event might be the individual user, or in a B2B case, which of your client data that's coming from. And then you might also want to decide to enrich that data. So as we've seen with the pipeline, you have an opportunity before you broadcast anything out or connect to a third-party system that you can actually, because this is an asynchronous pipeline, come into your data store or your transactional database and enrich it with more data before broadcasting out. And then you're just thinking about where you're sending the data. This is typically configured by the client or the end user, and then being able to broadcast that out. And so, we've talked a little bit about mobile being the source of user events here. I want to emphasize that this is kind of a general purpose pipeline on both ends of it. So we've already seen that with Lambdas, you can instantiate a variety of actions, but up front, there can be many sources of this data. So you can either send this through Kinesis Firehose or directly to S3. So you might want to take events from your web application, directly from your database potentially, maybe a third-party e-commerce system, and they can all go into this pipeline, and then you achieve consistency through it because you're putting things in the same format, and then you're able to take any actions you want on top of it. So for us, we started with event processing, and it was really for us internally to build an activity feed of what was happening in our content management system. We wanted to give our clients a view of all of the action any editor was taking on an app like API World, for example, and then give them the ability to see kind of what was happening from inside the content management system. This was our original need for this, but we've augmented it in a wide variety of ways. As we've already seen, enriching a Salesforce CRM, adding webhooks, email automation, and then more recently, we've started to use this as a data warehouse. So the beauty of having the events in S3 in a consistent format is that we've been able to go back and reprocess them to hydrate the data warehouse. In our case, we chose Elasticsearch, which any data store is available for you, and you're able to go directly from Lambda, excuse me, and you're able to then augment that data through other third-party systems or even your own internal systems to pass that data on. So Elasticsearch is great in that it's a NoSQL database, and we're able to put kind of a schemaless version of data in there. And then what we're actually doing is building on top of that to get more advanced in our own email marketing and be able to build triggers and understand things kind of outside of an email marketing system, and then be able to trigger campaigns in that system based on more complex rules and internal data. And then, talking a little bit about the future of APIs, there's a lot of exciting developments. So a lot of the world is moving to API first, and this is really a shift in the way web application development and mobile development is happening. So originally, when you built a website, you would build, generated pages where it was coming from your application server that was on top of your database. When you needed to add mobile, you had to figure out how to communicate with that. The world is really moving to API first, to where you're able to think of things really from an API perspective about all the various services that might connect to you, either to put data in the system or take data out. So moving to single-page web apps like AngularJS or React, you're able to then interact with the same API that your mobile apps are able to interact with. Most companies with an app also have a web application server, and so it's been a way to be able to leverage one API for multiple things. And then being able to put data into the system is really important as well. So we have been able to develop for ourselves an open API that our clients are able to use to bypass our content management system in terms of the user interface and get data directly into the system. This is really important for your business because the holy grail as you start to scale is starting to work with more channel partners and having companies and individuals build on top of your service. This makes it a lot more sticky. That's the beauty of APIs is that there's upfront development costs, but once the integration is complete, you're able to work with that partner over time. So this is a strategy that Guidebook has used to really do what I like to call mobile as a service, to use the kind of the popular service term. So now we're able to offer partners an entire mobile solution that they can control their own business and offer mobile apps at scale to clients. We're currently managing about 600 apps in each of the Apple and Google stores, and we're able to do this through the power of our platform, leveraging our open API. And then, as I mentioned, there are more and more specialized services out there that are coming around every day, and they're all API-based. You want to think of your system as kind of one node in a larger network, and think of interactions through data only and being able to leverage the power of other services. And then also, another interesting trend is the rise of API aggregators. So a company like Zapier is able to connect to your system and then offer a consistent transport format so other entities are able to plug into Zapier and you've already got a pre-canned integration. That's it for me today. Thank you so much for the time and for coming to the presentation.